I guess I'm gonna go with the Federian Mathis pick, and even though it was one I had to kind of sleep on, I had to sleep on it. But initially, when I heard it, it just was baffling to me because I didn't understand it, and I kind of thought like a few other fans thought, and the fact that the defensive tackle position we kind of created our own need and had to kind of maybe overdraft that need. But then the more I read up on it and the more I looked at it, I said this is it's slightly different than just creating a need. Because I don't think the we had a Federian Mathis on the roster already, and so I get the vision. I completely get the vision of the Federian Mathis pick now. Like I see what they want to do. I mean, they need the space eater. They want that guy sitting over the top of center, the one that can make plays. And
Robinson, but it happened. But round two especially, man, it was so many damn players on the board that could be an impact player for them, whether it be at tight end, linebacker, even Jaquan Brisker at safety. Like it was so many players available for them round two, and instead of like getting one of those guys, they went and took a run stopper D tackle that probably still would have been there third round, or you still had other D tackles that were available that could do the same exact things.
But who is that one player that you're actually looking forward to seeing stepping on the field, or actually hearing about? Because OTAs and rookie mini camps are coming up, training camp is coming up, preseason is coming up, regular season is still down the line. What is that one person that you're actually listening or looking forward to hearing their storyline develop as the months continue? What's going on, y'all? This is Mual, your host of the Trap or Die podcast, and I'm just here to tell you, man, while you're here, if you're new, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you follow us, man, as we continue to push out this content and create some things for the Washington Commanders and the NFL, man, but mainly the Commanders. This is a Washington channel. I want everybody to be involved. I want everybody to catch these live streams weekly. I want everybody to be a part of this growth that we got going on over here, man. So if you're here, if you're new, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you stay tuned, man, for much more content, fire content, and as we keep things pushing, man. So yeah, get to it. We appreciate it. All that good stuff. Peace. Welcome back to another episode of the Trap or Die podcast, provided to you by 214 Media. I am your host, Molly Maul. Hen Dog Maul, Coach Maul, all that good stuff. And the fellas are here. AJ, Dre, we're about to chop it up, talk a little Commanders draft recap. Fellas, how y'all doing today, man? Y'all good? Y'all healthy?
Tuesday afternoon. I mean, can't ask for more.
Nah, I got the bubble guts.
I got the BGs.
I'm just playing. Nah, I'm straight.
He must be nervous, man. This might be a good season for Washington. I don't think he want that. He want shit. So hey, but fellas, man, let's go ahead and get into it, dog. I guess first and foremost, once again, before we even get started, I said it on Twitter, but I guess I'll say it like formally too. Appreciate Hogs Haven and the Washington Commanders for letting us pop out Thursday night for the first round of the draft, man. It was good. We was able to get some good conversations going, and the people were able to see that. A lot of people were able to see that, get some eyes on us and some eyes on the players and their outlook for 2021, and also the alumni and the entertainment team as well. So appreciate the Commanders, appreciate Hogs Haven. Hopefully we can get to do things like that in the future. But in terms of the draft, and if y'all had any comments on that, go ahead get it off. But in terms of the draft, man, let's go macro first, and then narrow it down. Where are y'all at with this draft? What's the grade that y'all have on the Commanders and how they perform through this? And you can take it from a value standpoint, or you could take it from a player standpoint. Anything. Floor is yours.
I mean, I think for me, man, I probably give them a C. Not that I even think that the grading system really matters per se, but I feel like in the first round, when you have blue chip players available to you, you don't trade back in those situations. You've seen the teams that did trade up in the first round were typically the good teams, from the Saints to the Ravens, whatever the case is.
Lions traded up too.
Yeah, I mean, Lions ain't they not a good team, but they seen blue chip players there that they wanted, and they proceeded to do their best to go get them. I just think that when you have like a Jameson Williams, even Olave, who I don't think is a blue chip player, but I think he's pretty much the same player as Jahan Dotson. Maybe Jahan just gives you a little bit more um, as far as yards after the catch, but definitely Olave is a more polished route runner. But when you have Jameson Williams and you have Kyle Hamilton sitting there, for you to trade back to 16 and really, in my opinion, reach. Like some people say you can't use the word reach, whatever, but you can, because it's like you kind of have an understanding of where certain players should go in the draft. I think that's a big time deal. Especially when then you hear the commentary after the draft where it's like they're trying to sell you on Jahan Dotson's attributes, and you're like, but you had a player in Jameson Williams that does the same thing and even more at an exceptional level, and also provides you the versatility. Why didn't you take that guy? And it sounds like it just came down to personality for them as maybe Ron Rivera or the front office, but not really thinking how this player will mesh within their locker room and their personality in that aspect. It's like they went with the safer person as far as personality wise in that regard. And then second round, man, I've been seeing some of your clips you've been posting, Mual, and other people with Mathis, and I watched him during the season. He definitely should not have been their second round pick right there. There was so many players available on the board that they needed more so than a third string defensive tackle. Even if they did want to go tackle, I felt like the better prospect there was Travis Jones out of UConn versus Mathis, who provides you more explosiveness and also can play three downs. It just seemed like they reached a lot in the draft, man, and acquiring the additional picks is cool and all. I guess you were able to pick up Sam Howell in the 5th round. Cool. But then, my gripe with that is Ron Rivera felt compelled to call Carson Wentz to tell him that he was going to draft a 5th round quarterback. Like, that's bullshit, bro. Like, like that's insane to me that you would need to call the quarterback to tell him that you're going to take a 5th round quarterback. Like, yeah, he has a name behind him, and the fans will rally behind him because that's just what fans do typically in the NFL, especially when they don't have a proven quarterback like a Deshaun Watson, a Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, or Patrick Mahomes. They are going to call for that backup guy. But just overall, I just felt like it was a lot of reaches, in my opinion. Um, the responses that we got back from Ron Rivera and Mayhew in regards to these picks just don't fucking make sense to me. And yeah, I still don't really know what their true plan is, honestly. So that's why I just feel like it's a C grade overall.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a B actually. I actually love the move with Jahan Dotson. I know some people may call it a reach and whatnot, but I mean there were reports that the Chiefs and the Packers coveted Dotson as well. And if those guys would have drafted him, they would have got all kinds of high accolades just because of the quarterbacks they're playing with. Um, you know, it came down to me in that first round of if you're looking for a wide receiver, then how much separation is it from the speed guys? I know they coveted Drake London. I mean, the reports were that, that night Albert Breer had reported that if the receiver Washington does, if the receiver that Washington really wants isn't on the board at 11, then they will love to trade down. And everyone just assumed that receiver is Drake London. I mean, he brought something different to the table than the other guys that were there, Jameson Williams, Olave Wilson, and Dotson. So they probably had those speed guys rated around the same thing, or at least a little, well, not too much separation. And then when you look at a guy like Jameson Williams, who AJ loves, he's probably not going to be available for, maybe half the season. Maybe he's available early in the season, but either way, it's, he's injured. So that probably played a factor in it. And then you trade down a few spots, you get Jahan Dotson, and you add more picks because you went into this draft with 6 draft picks, and they clearly kept saying they wanted to come out of this draft with more picks. And again, I was a Dotson fan before the draft, and I just think that's a good play right there. I mean, he's a playmaker. He's going to add something to the offense, and it clearly shows that the coaching staff wants to put more points on the board. They want to give Carson Wentz more of a safety net. And then the second round pick, Mathis, I think all of us kind of scratched our heads with that one. I mean, it wasn't so much the player. It was more so kind of, as AJ said, there were other guys on the board that I probably liked more there. But when you kind of deep dive into the Mathis pick, you kind of understand it a little bit more. I know a lot of fans will say they mismanaged the defensive tackle position by getting rid of Ioannidis and letting Tim Settle go. Well, Ioannidis, his production versus what he was making the last couple of years just wasn't matching up. And I also think he's not what they're looking for as far as what they want at that defensive tackle position. They wanted a guy like Mathis, a space eater, kind of in the mode of Tim Settle maybe. But you know, Tim Settle, I think he wanted to go somewhere where he was going to get much more playing time and start. That opportunity was never really here with Deron Payne and John Allen in front of him. So you couldn't do much with that. But Mathis is a guy, team captain at Alabama. That means Nick Saban thinks really high of him. So you can kind of understand that. I mean, you did feel a need there. I mean, there's definitely a need that was filled there, and you can get it. The Brian Robinson pick, obviously, you've been looking for a guy that can spell Gibson for long periods of time. J.D. McKissick is more of your all-purpose back. He's not the guy that's going to come in and spell Gibson in the running game more so. And Robinson, in my opinion, he could be a guy that can eventually start. He could push Gibson, man. Like Gibson can't be out there fumbling the ball. I don't think Robinson ever fumbled in his career, if I remember hearing that correctly. So that's a guy that can push Gibson. I mean, but they definitely gives the offense more versatility. You get a change of pace back like Brian Robinson, who was a thumper. And then the rest of the draft, I mean, Percy Butler, a lot of people seem to be pretty high on him. I didn't get to watch too much of him, but I've been hearing a lot of good things from a lot of people as far as he goes. I mean, he's a very versatile safety. I think his biggest impact to start the season off, obviously, is going to be special teams as a gunner. But, Ron says he wants to try him in nickel. But some people may have said it was a reach. But again, who's to say what's a reach in the fourth round or not? At that point, it's anyone's game or anyone's guess. And then, of course, the Sam Howell and Cole Turner picks.
One second. Only because I wanted us to go down the list. I realized you was doing it for a second. Hold on. Let's stop before we get to Sam Howell so we can have these conversations. Yes. So overall, I know you said a solid B. For me, I was struggling. I was teetering on C+ and B-. And when it came down to it, I gave myself a final grade, and it was a B- for me. I think, fellas, when we talk about that first round pick in Jahan Dotson, I think initially Thursday night, I thought that these guys panicked. I thought that these guys jumped the gun selecting Jahan at 16. They messed this one up and said 19 on a sheet that I'm just using for the sake. But they selected him at 16. But when you make that trade from 11 down back, you got to kind of evaluate what you're willing to lose. And I think one of the two players that were linked to Washington was Kyle Hamilton and Chris Olave. Now, when the Saints moved up, I personally thought that Chris Olave was in play because of the strength that I personally just thought that they needed a receiver all along. So them trading up, if it was either quarterback or receiver, turned out to be receiver, and that was the right decision given the way the quarterbacks went. But when you make those decisions to trade back, you have to do that further analysis, and something that you mentioned, Dre. The Chiefs and who was the other team? The Packers, was it? That was interested. Okay, so the Chiefs and the Packers were interested in Jahan, and I don't know where they selected in terms of the first round. It was a hectic night for us, so I don't even know what number they were at. But you have to kind of do that evaluation on what other teams are out there that can potentially take who you need and the position that you need. And personally, when they saw Jameson move up, Jameson get selected by the Lions and got traded up. When they seen the Ravens trade up and select Kyle Hamilton, it leaves one of their players who were on the board, but you can't really risk it because there's already 4 receivers off the board. 4 other receivers, 4 of the top 5. I had Jahan Dotson number 4. We all had Jahan Dotson in our top 5. But 4 receivers off the board, you kind of have to evaluate, can I risk trading back? Because you have to remember, they had other trade offers at 16 too. They could have moved back even further. And they said, no, we can't afford that because we're down to one of our top receivers that we value high on our board. So you select them. Jahan Dotson at 16. Initially, like I said, I thought they panicked. But when you listen to their evaluation and their process, I said, okay, if this is one of your top guys in your first round, you take that top guy. It is what it is. You risk losing other players in the process, and that's part of trading back. It is what it is. So if that's who you value, all right, that's how you value. The other picks that stand out, obviously, day 1 and day 2 were the biggest questions for the Commanders. Day 3, you didn't really see a lot of issues in terms of draft value, draft boards, or anything like that. But day 2, and we can transition to another conversation or further conversation. But day 2 for me, it was weird again because we knew you need a defensive line, right? You knew that after this point, the conversations of Daron Payne being out there and possibly being traded and definitely not being offered an extension. You wonder what the news is like. You kind of have to find somebody. You have 2 defensive tackles and Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne moving forward. You need some backups. But when you draft a guy at round 2 and then you figure out what he does, you question about the value. Now, there's been plenty of people who said he could have been a 3rd round guy. And for the record, just to circle back briefly, Jahan was a late 1st, 2nd, or early 2nd. So it's not like they did it was not a criminal overdrafting of him in my view, but it was like you could have found a way to get him later if you played your cards right initially. But back to the 2nd, when you play that Mathis card and you take that guy, you have to, again, understand what they're trying to do. So it's all subjective in terms of where we value these guys. But if we don't know their board, that's the conclusion that I came along with. I question value, but I don't question their board. So if I had to give like a sum of these day 2 or day 1, day 2 picks, it's not necessarily to add on to the conversation of they wanted solid guys, for sure guys with high floors, all those things, all that narrative. You also have to determine like where they fit. It's not about literally these guys are good players, but how do they fit in your offense? How do they fit in your defense? Brian Robinson is something literally that Antonio Gibson lacks. Brian Robinson has the one cut decisiveness. He has the vision. He has open field burst. He has an open field speed. And that's not necessarily a negative on Antonio, but in terms of decision making, before you move forward to the 2nd level and the 3rd level, that's where Brian Robinson has Antonio Gibson beat. Fidarian Mathis, Matt Ioannidis, Tim Settle. I mean, and to a degree, well, I'll leave it at them two. I'm not going to speak on John because I think John Allen improved in both the run and pass game. It's the reason why he's getting a lot of double teams. And I think Daron Payne is a fair run stopper, but I think he's playing out of position. I think that's one of the reasons why Fidarian was drafted high. I think when you look at what Tim Settle and Matt Ioannidis did, they were successful in rushing the passer. Matt Ioannidis for sure. But if you have these guys in the interior and you're asking them to play the zero technique over the center, in between the guards or over top of the guards, 0-1-2, all those things, are you asking those two to anchor up and take on these double teams on a day-to-day basis? No, you're going to ask Daron Payne, but Daron Payne is efficient further out. So get you that guy in Fidarian Mathis, who can be that anchor, who can survive in the one-on-ones and defeat the one-on-ones and things like that. Get you that guy who can take on that role that Daron Payne doesn't have to serve anymore. Like, let that man eat further out. Same thing with Jonathan Allen. Like, if you get a guy in Fidarian who can win his one-on-ones, that's going to create problems for offensive linemen because Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are going to eat on their one-on-ones. So who do you decide to double? And I think that's kind of the understanding their draft board and their vision in the 2nd round is what they want out of that defensive line. I don't think that Mathis is a replacement in all. I think that's a misconception. I don't think Mathis is a replacement for Daron Payne per se, because I think they fit 2 different roles and they play better at different positions or different techniques or different alignments, I guess. So I think that's also a misconception. He's not a Payne replacement. He is an addition. They'll have to keep looking for other replacements. But in the meantime, that's kind of where I'm at. B-. The day 1 and day 2 picks are confusing. on the surface, but you have to understand we don't know their board, but I do understand their plan. And I think their plan was to get better fits for what they want to do moving forward on both sides of the ball.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
definitely
no problem.
agree
Oh, okay.
with
I was
that.
about to say.
No, I didn't know if you was finished, but yeah, no, I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely agree on all of it. That's why I said it may not have been necessarily picks that the fans may have wanted. I mean, me included in that. But you can understand when you do a deep dive on it. I mean, sometimes, like I said, things go a little bit more complex in draft boards and everything. Like, especially when a lot of people talk about value, but what really is value? Who determines value? I mean, there's no consensus GM board that determines value. The value that we pretty much go by are off of what you see the Mel Kipers and the Todd McShays do. So, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, sure, they can be right. I mean, or they can be wrong. I mean, somebody's going to be right or wrong at the end of the day. So you just have to try to understand why they're making these picks, as you were saying, more versus like, okay, well, they should have took this guy or this guy. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't quite understand it, but at the end of the day, they're running the show. They're trying to sell that we don't understand what they're trying to do, which is absolutely 100% correct. We don't, and I feel like they don't understand what they're trying to do. They're just like winging it. Like it just does not make sense to me, and it's alarming when two of the players that you selected with your top two picks both say that they didn't expect to even go at those picks, which, you know, sometimes it's not an issue, but like with this particular regime, it is, because that means that you're reaching, like you're reaching on guys. We're used to the Patriots kind of doing that. But when the Patriots do that, they typically hit on those type of guys because they really fit within their system. With these two picks, it just doesn't make sense to me. Because in my opinion, Jahan Dotson is he's gonna be a solid receiver, right? But I don't think he's what Washington needed at 11 or 16 overall. In my opinion, he's a slot receiver. With Mathis, yeah, he's different than Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. That's not what they necessarily need, in my opinion, on the D line. Like, I feel like there's free agents such as Star Latui, who is a former Carolina Panther, and we all know how they like to bring in former Carolina Panthers in here. It's probably going to happen again this week once James Bradbury gets cut from the New York Giants. They're probably going to reach out to him and see if he can come into the fold, but it's just, I don't quite understand it. I understood the need of wanting to get another back. I think we all seen the writing on the wall with that, especially with how the visits were going. I didn't think that it would be Brian Robinson, but it happened. But round two especially, man, it was so many damn players on the board that could be an impact player for them, whether it be a tight end, linebacker, even Jaquan Brisker at safety. Like, it was so many players available for them round two, and instead of like getting one of those guys, they went and took a run stopper D tackle that probably still would have been there third round, or you still had other D tackles that were available that could do the same exact thing. So it's just confusing overall for me.
Well,
But
before we
yeah,
go, I did want to point out AJ. I know his agent Nicole Lynn. Do you believe her when she says that Fedarian Mathis would have gone in the next 10 picks if he didn't get drafted by the Commanders?
I I don't believe her. I mean, I know her, but I don't believe her when the client says that he wasn't preparing to get drafted until third round.
But
What was
she
it,
also
third or fourth
said,
round?
but she also mentioned that she
she
purposely
mentioned that
gets
part.
her
Yeah.
gets her clients. She don't get her clients' hopes up, so she actually tells them something like they won't get drafted as high here, just so they can get pleasantly surprised. She did mention that as well.
Yeah, that's all bullshit, bro. So, if that's the approach that she takes with her business, that's kind of weird to me, because at the end of the day, a lot of agents, especially with rookies, you tend to lose you end up getting fired for the expectations that you set for them, and they're not met. So I don't know if you necessarily want your client to get surprised. I mean, I feel like the whole purpose of being the agent and representing the rookie is to, get a feel for what teams are looking for and where they might possibly take your guy, so that you can provide them that expectation. I'm not going into things trying to have my guy be surprised. You feel me? Like if I know I have a day 2 pick and I have a day 2 pick, but I possibly think that he could go first round, I'm gonna sit there and tell him exactly, hey, you may possibly go first round. Here's the 2 teams that really like you, and they may end up taking you with their pick, whether it be the late first round or whatever. I'm not gonna tell them like, hey, you're probably gonna go day 3, and then you're surprised you got drafted day 2, day
But a
1. Like,
pleasant
nah.
surprise is better than a bad surprise, though, AJ. Like if she does say, "Hey, you could go," you right now you're viewed as a day 2 pick, but you could go round 1. Then his expectations go up, and he starts thinking round 1. And then if he doesn't go round 1, then he's a little disappointed. Then he may be a little mad at her for getting his hopes up.
Nah, I feel like you should just be fully transparent with your client, but everybody has a different approach. I don't I don't necessarily believe that that was the case. I think that knowing Nicole, like, she doesn't mind the spotlight, she doesn't mind the interaction. She's one of those agents that doesn't shy away from the communication aspect of things, whereas a lot of the people that work in the industry don't really say too much to the media. You probably never heard them say anything, but in this regard, when it comes to the NFL side of things, it's pretty much Drew Rosenhaus and Nicole Lynn that do a lot of the talking. So at the end of the day, I guess maybe it makes her look better in her eyes from a marketing standpoint as an agent. But I don't believe what she said in regards to that, because at the end of the day, I gotta trust what the player themselves said to me before the agent. And the player himself said that he believed that he was going third round.
And I mean, but for Washington though, and this is what I was trying to get at. Pick 98 was at the bottom of the third round. Like you kind of have to also, like, we're factoring all of these things in, and with Nicole saying what she said, on top of the fact that Dre, I don't think Dre got into this part, but she had also mentioned that within where Washington picked, there was a couple teams within the next 10 spots that were expecting, they were trying to get Fedarian. So I think you have to factor in all of these things, like you as in people listening, like people have to understand, like, what do you prioritize? Do you think you can get one of your top running backs at pick 98 versus picking one now with much more available, but losing one of your top defensive linemen? I think that's kind of the whole crux of this conversation. And I think that Phil, personally, like, when we say there's other defensive linemen on the board, are we talking about that dude from OU? Like, the dude from OU doesn't play the nose. Like, they put him at nose, but that wasn't his position. He wasn't supposed to be playing there. He did that because the defensive linemen at OU were undersized. So the coaches had him play a certain position, but he didn't have the same strength and the same anchor ability that Fedarian would have. So you had to figure out, like, if he went on to the next level. And I think at the Senior Bowl, I didn't watch him in particular, but I think at the Senior Bowl, they actually had him at a more beneficial position for him. I think he was at the 3 technique in the Senior Bowl. He would have a better opportunity on the next level to play something else similar to what John Allen is playing. So I don't want a guy from OU, if we're talking about having somebody that can eat up space and stand strong on double teams, or stand strong as a one gap player at least. Like, I would rather take Fedarian. And if we know what we're trying to do, and we're trying to make sure the defensive line, the one that we all complained about last year, by the way, about them having the issues and staying in their lanes, making sure that they're getting to the running back. To the quarterback. Secondly, if y'all remember, I mean, yes, the statistically the rush defense was good, but when you played the better rush teams, look, the Chargers had their way on the offensive line, from the ground game to the passing game, pass protection. Like, when you play those better offensive linemen, you gotta have those guys up front who are going to dominate in one-on-one situations. I think that's kind of what their go-to was, and they had to get Duran and John in beneficial positions on that line, and they needed somebody who could help them do that. And I think that's why they said, you know what, 47 may be a little too high, to AJ's point, but I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy because I don't think we can get him at 98. And another thing, and I'm done here on this one. I want to give kudos to AJ for pointing this out, fellas. There is, and we've said this for a while, but there is some sense of arrogance in terms of like how they defend their selections, how they defend their choices in the off seasons, and even when they make free agent signings or whatever, anything like that. Like there is some sense of arrogance, and it's stemming from Ron. It's not really stemming from Martin Mayhew. Like he's decisive, he's concisive in his in his pressers. Like it is what it is with him. But Ron will give you a 5-minute rant about why he had to do what he did. So to your point, AJ, yes, I do think sometimes that they feel like they know everything and we don't know anything. And it is showing itself here. But this is one of those ones where I can say that I understand the route that they went. But to your point, I agree. Ooh wee. All right, cool.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna try to move on.
You good, you good. Let's go ahead and get to this quarterback thing, man. Sam Howell. And when before we even get to Sam Howell, do you think that they kind of can won or at least got back the value with the trade with Carson Wentz? And what I mean by that is first I'll go through the Carson Wentz trade and what they given up. They gave up a 2022 third rounder and a 2023 third rounder contingent upon a percentage of snaps. So it may be a second rounder, right? And this year they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 draft picks. And they found a way to get their third rounder back and picked up 2 fifth rounders. On the surface, does it feel like that trade is kind of washed out, or is that financial thing still sticking over their head to $28 million? I guess we can quickly answer that one and get to Sam Howell.
I mean, if financially you still kind of strapped, they actually mentioned that in the press conference, saying that, well, Ron did. He was mentioning that, it can kind of strap or handicap some of the decisions you make when you acquire a veteran quarterback that makes, that type of money, that $28 million that Carson makes. But from a draft standpoint, I do believe you did get back, or at least kind of canceled it out, because you did get the third rounder this year's draft. And not only that, you were able to also get an extra 2 fifths. They gave up a 6th rounder to get that. But even still, you got more value out of that. And not only that, for next year's draft, I think they patiently waited out a lot of free agents. As you see with the Trey Turner signing yesterday, they waited to sign him after the compensatory penalties would come into play. So now they don't face any compensatory penalties, and now they will definitely get a 3rd round pick next year for Brandon Scherf, which kind of cancels out the 3rd or the 2nd that they're going to give up next year. So I believe they did, from a draft standpoint, get the value, but I think from a financial standpoint, they're still trying to figure out ways to maneuver around that, and which is why they had to get rid of a couple of guys like Matt Ioannidis and what's this, Eric Flowers and those type of guys. So they're still, you can see, trying to figure it out from a financial standpoint. Yeah, and Landon as well, even though that may be a guy that you might see come back here. I wouldn't be surprised to see Landon come back. So we'll see how they maneuver going forward, especially now that you can sign free agents and don't go against the compensatory picks next year. And also, as we've been talking about for a while down on this show, the June 1st cuts. So we will see how they maneuver with the cap going forward.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's hard to answer that question in May. I think we just got to see how Carson Wentz does, because I mean, it just really boils down to how he plays. If he plays well and succeeds, and exceeds also our expectations, then it makes sense to have made that move and kind of like cripple your ability to being able to bring in top tier free agents in here and seeing what they could do and provide to the team, especially if you're just going to pay a quarterback $28 million with the opportunity to be able to re-sign them long term. That it's a good deal, but I'm not sold on Carson Wentz, so that's why I just wouldn't have done it if I were in their position. I would have let the Colts pay him, and I would have been able to still have my draft assets. And if I did end up losing out on getting Carson Wentz, so be it. Like, maybe the way the draft even played out, I would have been able to get a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. that was potentially supposed to go in the first round. So I just feel like you could have. I don't know, man. It's just in this situation. I just feel like we just got to wait to see how Carson Wentz plays out.
All right. I personally, I don't know if I answered this, which is funny before I ask you all the question, but I do think that they did get their value back. From a compensation standpoint, financially, 28 million is hard to justify for 1 year because clearly that plan this off season, as we said 1,000 times already, was Carson Wentz. That was the plan. Once they identified that plan B or plan C, whatever Carson Wentz was, the plan was let's get Carson Wentz. We'll worry about the rest after, and that's when you lose certain players. But in order to make up for it, you have to start from a compensation standpoint. They did that, I think. And then next year, to Dre's point that I didn't bring up, yeah, the compensatory picks. You're getting a third round back. I don't know what you're getting for Tim Settle. I would imagine you're getting some back.
Seventh rounder. You'll get a seventh rounder.
That's ugly. Are we getting anything for Matt Ioannidis? Or
no, because he was released.
He was released. Okay, so
yeah,
7th rounder and the 3rd rounder right now for 2 of our drafted players. So that is what it is. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that side. The financial thing, you're going to free up a lot next year. Obviously, after this heavy tax has been put on it. So I guess we'll see how they maneuver from a play standpoint. The decision to pay $28 million for 1 year on Carson will ultimately come down to his play, to AJ's point. So we kind of have to figure that part out down the road. Now, Sam Howell, fellas, I knew he was getting a quarterback. I actually thought day 2, but given the quarterback slide, these scouts meant the NFL scouts and the NFL teams, not the Bleacher Reports, not the draft networks, not all those other guys, including myself, who I thought Malik would go first round. So I'm gonna lump myself into the online scouting thing. Like, I was wrong, I was dead wrong, but I'm also a rookie in this, so I'm gonna go ahead and absolve myself at the same time. But these guys, the NFL scouts and the teams, were on point. There was no first round talent out there in a sense. Outside of one quarterback, Kenny Pickett, the others went 3rd rounder or later. Sam Howell in the 5th round. How are we valuing that, and what do we project Sam Howell to be for the Commanders?
Yeah, first off, I would like to say in regards to Sam Howell, I know a lot of fans were kind of excited about that pick. And I also, been a guy that's watched Sam Howell for a couple of years. I like Sam Howell, but you got to caution people to say, I don't care who that quarterback is, what his name is. If he's drafted in the 5th round, please lower expectations. Sam Howell, he's obviously, he had a down year at North Carolina. He was projected to be the first quarterback taken before this season actually started. North Carolina lost a lot of talent up there, which probably, obviously hindered some of what he did this year. But I thought he still had a pretty productive season at North Carolina. But with Sam Howell, sometimes you worry about the decision making on the field. A lot of times, like he can make some pretty boneheaded plays. He almost kind of reminds me of in the mode of a Baker Mayfield. I don't know if he's necessarily will be as good as a Baker Mayfield, but he's kind of in that mode of the Baker Mayfield. He's really not that fast, even though he had a productive season running the ball as a quarterback. I think he surprised a lot of people with that, but I wouldn't consider him a dual threat quarterback by any means. But that expectation for me going into the season, he should be QB number 3 right now, unless he starts to really shine in training camp. He can take over, or he can maybe beat out Taylor Heineke. But I don't think that's the plan for the coaching staff right now. I don't think they necessarily want to rush the development of Sam Howell. They picked him, and they obviously have some time to let him, develop without any rush. But while we're on the subject of Sam Howell, quarterbacks, I kind of wanted to mention the undrafted free agent they signed, Cole Kelly. Cole Kelly, Cole Kelly, 6'7", 268 pounds, huge guy, but he was very, very productive at the FCS level in college football, which is the same level that Carson Wentz played at North Dakota State. Cole Kelly played at Southeast Louisiana, but he was 59 touchdowns in his career, 10 interceptions, also the Walter Football Walter Payton Football Award winner, which is the same award Taylor Heineke won for top collegiate athlete. So at quarterback position. So he's a guy, they got two pieces in him and Sam Howell that they could probably view as long-term development projects. So that'll be interesting to kind of watch those guys compete in training camp and see if Cole Kelly gives you anything at this next level. I mean, obviously he's a big guy, and I actually think he's more of a dual threat than Taylor Heineke is, as far as he's as big as he is, he can move and he can run. So those are two guys you will definitely be keeping an eye on. I just don't think a lot of fans know about Cole Kelly right now, but everyone knows about Sam Howell, obviously, because of the popularity. But those are two guys they may be keeping in the back pocket as potential long-term developments at quarterback.
AJ.
My bad. I was coughing. What was the question again?
AJ really got the BGs, man. I think that's what it was.
Nah, I ain't
Shit,
got.
hold on, bro. I can't come off mute just yet. Hey, but nah, I was asking about Sam Howell, bro. What do you think about the value, but also what do you project Howell as a commander? What do you project his time to be? Time to be in Washington.
Yeah, man. I definitely didn't believe any of the quarterbacks were first round talent. I kind of been saying that since like we knew who was gonna be entering the draft or whatever back in like
You actually
January.
have. I'm gonna give you credit.
Um,
I remember you won that high on none of these guys, bro.
yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that Pittsburgh went Kenny Pickett over Malik Willis. But at the end of the day, um, I think it's great value to be able to get a guy in Sam Howell who's projected the number one pick in the draft last year, possibly in the fifth round. But it's also very telling of how NFL scouts thought of him and his colleagues at the position, that they dropped that far. I think with Sam, he definitely has some attributes that you could work with. I think that him coming to this particular team allows him an opportunity to possibly enter in the mix and being a starting quarterback. It kind of worked out in his favor. He can get to the money sooner. If he does get an opportunity, he balls out. Carson Wentz is not a guaranteed lock as a quarterback for the future. Um, he also will be surrounded by talent. I think a lot of people don't take into account, especially for Sam Howell and Malik Willis, but they didn't play with a lot of great talent last year with their team, especially Malik Willis and Liberty. None of those guys got drafted at all. And with UNC, Sam pretty much was left to do everything on his own due to the fact that he lost two running backs to the NFL. He also lost to Ami Brown, and he also lost like some offensive linemen or whatever. So his whole entire offense was changed, and now everything was put on him. So a lot of games that he played in were forced. He had to do so much. He felt so much weight on his shoulders to do so much. I think he's also um, a good person for that quarterback room as far as like getting along with Carson. They happen to share the same agent. They also are heavily devoted Christians. I just think that Sam does a better job of connecting with his teammates more so than Carson Wentz. And, I just think that it provides him an opportunity to be able to, show off his skill set. He definitely has a strong arm. He's athletic. He can still run the RPO system. I think, if Carson doesn't end up faring too well, I think that Sam Howell could easily come in here during the season and start playing. I think the part for me is Taylor Heineke. I think that they should try to get some assets for him if they can, because I don't see
Mhm.
him being the number two quarterback.
Well, it's unfortunate because I kind of agree with you, but I was saying they need to trade that man. Um, but while he was on that hot streak, quote unquote hot streak during that 4 game winning streak. Unfortunately, things went south real quick for Taylor, so it's either cut him at this point or maybe You know what I'm saying? Keep him on your roster. Ain't nobody trading nothing for that man, bro.
Man,
But
you just never really know if somebody gets hurt during this OTA mini camp or training camp session. I think the top three will be Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Taylor Heineke as options for teams to move on from and bring somebody in. But I just feel like for Taylor, he shouldn't get too comfortable because I feel like Sam does everything better than him, even though we haven't seen Sam play on the NFL level. But his traits are way higher than than Taylor Heineke. So I think it's very telling also that maybe Ron and company are ready to move on from him. But I mean, it's a great value. I just think what's not fair, like yesterday, me and you happen to be in the same space, and motherfuckers is arguing about Taylor Heineke and Sam
bro,
Howell. I'm
I
just like,
wasted
bro,
like
like,
20 minutes for that conversation. I'm like, bro, why are we talking about Taylor Heineke, bro?
yeah, I just feel like those type of conversations don't need to be had right now, but it's going to happen in regards to Sam Howell because nobody knows what they're getting in Carson Wentz. And if he ends up coming in here and stinking up the joint, Sam Howell will easily be a fan favorite. He will replace Taylor Heineke, and Dre will have a new son within the Washington metropolitan area.
So AJ, but here's why you don't trade Taylor Heineke right now, because he's the only quarterback on the roster right now that knows the offense, and he's a guy that he pretty much knows the writing on the wall. He knows he's not going to start. He knows he doesn't have a long-term future here, but he's also a guy who people seem to gravitate towards personality-wise. They like him, and I think he would be tremendous in helping a Sam Howell acclimate to the NFL and get him going and kind of show him the ropes, so to speak. So I don't think you get rid of Taylor Heineke for that reason. And the other reason is I don't think there's a market for Taylor Heineke. I mean, I don't think there's a market for quarterbacks with below average NFL arm strength in his league, even if it's just to be a backup. I mean, he doesn't really have any familiarity in anyone else's offense. I mean, he's known Scott Turner for a while. He's played with Scott Turner for a while. So he's a guy, he can come in and kind of do what Scott Turner wants him to do, and Scott Turner can work with him to, play or call the game towards his strengths. So, like I said, I don't think you trade Taylor Heineke because I do think he offers more value in the quarterback room, especially when it comes to Sam Howell and also the guy I just mentioned, Cole Kelly, just to acclimate to the NFL. I think that's more valuable than looking for a possible 7th-round pick right now.
But and to add on that though, well, two things. The first thing is, I mean, at the end of the day, if something happens with Wentz, like in game, not necessarily like a whole new start for Taylor, but in game, he's a joke. Like sometimes you need that little spark, man. A dude come and fucking play with his head cut off, bro. Like that's all Taylor really gonna do for you at this point, because you know what he gets from a skill standpoint. But when you need a change of pace, or not when you have a change of pace, it can provide benefits too. Because he's just a gamer. And I mean, limited from a quarterback standpoint, physically, but sometimes it works. But secondly, Washington has said all along that they needed 3 quarterbacks. So, and they found their third in Sam Howell, but I don't see them getting their third in Sam Howell and then cutting Taylor and saying, all right, now we just need 2 quarterbacks. I understand AJ's point because I don't want to misconstrue it. I know he's saying, like, see what happens around injuries and mini camps and OTAs or even training camp or something like that. But I think they'll still stay true to the 3 quarterback thing. I also think to the Sam side, you all spoke on Sam in terms of what you all think from a skill set standpoint. I'm not going to rehash that. I do think there's one thing here that's in Sam's benefit, and I think drafting him in the 5th round is more beneficial to his career than anything that he can really imagine. And I'm not saying he didn't want to be drafted first round. Of course, everybody probably wants to get drafted first round. But when you have a high profile name in Sam Howell, examples like Malik Willis, obviously, too, Desmond Ridder for his entire time in Cincinnati, to a lesser degree than all the ones I just named, Carson Strong, because his name had blossomed throughout the 2021 season. So you're looking at like a 2nd round pick for him, projected wise, maybe even 3rd round. I don't remember seeing anything in the first round in terms of projections, but when you have these guys who slip and you get Sam Howell in the 5th round, nobody's looking at this man as a person who needs to start right away. And I don't even think they're looking at him to become the second string. I don't think they're having him in any type of competition. I don't think that's going to be the case for Sam. I think he'll be allowed to comfortably develop at his own pace because there's no pressure on him. And I think the best comparison to have it and like to kind of wrap our minds around it, and it's unfortunate that this person didn't have that opportunity, is Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins is so Sam Howell, I feel like, is going to have this opportunity that Dwayne Haskins should have in terms of his development. And I think that the rush of the internal pressure that they had on themselves from a coaching standpoint, the organization standpoint, they didn't even allow Dwayne Haskins to get the allotted time that he needed from a play standpoint. And I think they'll be able to do this with Sam Howell, different regime, but in the same vein, this is a regime in terms of Ron Rivera that drafted their guy. So they'll be able to finally sit down, develop, work on him from a day-to-day standpoint, make sure that he's the best professional quarterback that he can be, and then go from there. And if he just happens to show it that this is the guy that needs to be starting day one, this is that dynamite factor. If he starts to show it almost immediately, we're going to know that when they step into the preseason. We're going to know that if he gets bumped up to second string. Like these are tales that's going to tell us that he's going to be that guy for the future. But in the meantime, I think he's in a perfect position for his career to start things off. You don't have to worry about starting him. So I just think that it's a good signing. It's a good value pick to answer the question, the original question that we had. It's really good value, and I'm just interested to seeing the patience that they have with him and the work that they put into him throughout this offseason training camp and throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think where it gets really interesting is the personality. Like I think within that locker room, Sam's going to be able to win over that locker room easily. Yeah, even though he is a devoted Christian, and that's not to say anything bad about religion, but him and Carson Wentz have like similar beliefs. It's just that Sam goes about it a bit differently, and he's able to connect with those guys better than Carson can. And I just feel like eventually during the season, it's going to come up because I'm not sure how Carson Wentz is going to do. I have no faith in Carson Wentz. Like I personally even feel that it was alarming. I think I already said it on this episode. I felt like it was already alarming that Ron felt that he needed to provide Carson Wentz comfort and telling him that, hey, with the 5th round pick, we're going to go ahead and draft Sam Howell. That is alarming to me because you're not doing that with any other position. Anybody that's getting drafted over the weekend is possibly there to take someone else's job, and you're not calling those other positions to tell them, hey, you're not calling Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen to say, hey, we're going to take Mathis here, just to give you a heads up. You're not calling Cam Sims, Curtis Samuel to say, or Terry McLaurin, like, hey, we're going to take Jahan Dotson here with our 1st round pick.
AJ, don't you think that's a bit of apples to oranges comparison, though? I mean, quarterback, you only have one position on the field at a time. Wide receivers and defensive tackles, they have multiple guys on the field at a time. But I also kind of think that's being overblown with Ron calling Carson to say, hey, we're picking Sam Howell. I mean, I just look at that as just a coach communicate. I mean, usually a coach and quarterback relationship kind of go hand in hand. Their relationship is going to be different than, say, a Ron's relationship with a Bobby McCain, because the quarterback is the driving factor on your offense. So you kind of just want to have that communication level with that guy. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. I just think that, the communication. Now, Ron absolutely didn't have to do this at all. He didn't have to call Carson Wentz. And I don't think that would have been an issue if he didn't call Carson Wentz. But to me, it's just a coach and quarterback. A coach is being communicating. And I do think Ron just always likes to cover his bases when it comes to communicating. I think that's one of his stronger traits is that, he is a guy that knows how to reach out to players, and he wants to have that open line of communication with guys. Like, I just disagree that, he wouldn't have done it for any other position, because I don't think he needs to do it for wide receivers or DTs, guys who you'll have 3 to 4 players on the field at that position at the same time.
I mean, I think he knows that his quarterback is soft. Like, I think he understands that. I hear where you're coming from. Like, quarterback is the main position, but I just feel like I don't think Bill Belichick told Mac Jones that they were going to take Billy Zappi. What was that, third round? Like, I don't think that conversation happened. I understand wanting that line of communication, but even if it did happen, you don't need to tell the public that. And if you are asked about it, you can say, you could say something differently, like, that's between me and Carson, But to come out there publicly and say that is just like you're bringing more attention to the situation as well, with a player who already has a fragile personality and not being a good mess within the locker room, and also being in a previous situation where Jalen Hurts was taken in the second round and that upset him.
Now that part, it's hard, man. And the reason why I get it on both sides. Like you don't have to reach out, but like if you know your history with the player, you know that it's probably also beneficial to reach out. And then from a third standpoint, communication is also the ultimate equalizer. Like transparent communication, effective communication, and I understand that side, and I think it's kind of a mix of a few things, but in the end, I don't think you really needed to do it for a fifth rounder. I don't think that, but I understood why it would have. For two examples, because this was a conversation I ran into. I understand why you would have needed to do it for a second rounder in Jalen Hurts, and I understand why you would need to done it for a first rounder in Jordan Love for the Packers standpoint. Like communication is important when it comes to first and second rounders. Fifth rounder, I don't get it. And I don't want to harp on it like to a big deal, because at the end of the day, I didn't really care that he reached out to him. Like that shit didn't mean nothing to me. Like whatever. But if it came down to it and I had my choice, I wouldn't fucking reach out for no fifth rounder. And I wouldn't even expect Carson Wentz to be threatened by a fifth rounder.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
I would expect my top quarterback to be threatened by a first or second rounder, not no fifth rounder.
Yeah, you shouldn't be threatened. I mean, he does come with a name, and he was projected, QB number one pick in the draft previously. But I don't think Carson even is privy to all of that. At the end of the day, if you a dog, you a dog. You ain't supposed to be concerned about no damn fifth round quarterback getting drafted and your job. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't change what you are supposed to do at quarterback, because if you don't ball out, bro, you're gonna be at home like me, Mual, and Dre. Like straight up. I don't even see him being a backup quarterback.
I'm an emergency option.
But it's unpredictable with these NFL players. Remember, there was reports with Trent Williams being upset that Garon Christian got drafted in the third round. Yeah, that was a legit report coming out saying that Trent Williams was really upset that they drafted Garon Christian. Come on, Trent Williams should never be threatened by first off a third round pick. I mean, we didn't know what Garon Christian was going to be at the time, but I mean, why is Trent Williams feeling threatened by that pick? So I mean, just saying, you just don't know the NFL player psyche, which is to both of you all's point that I don't think it was necessary for Ron to call Carson Wentz, but I just also don't really see the issue with it as well. I mean, because Ron just one of those guys, maybe he over communicates sometimes, and that may be his issue. But again, I mean, I think a lot of players kind of appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat, bro. It's not necessary, but it's understandable. Hold on, where is that John at? If I can find it. Well, while I'm looking for something, I'll bring it up while you all are talking. Let's close it out with a couple more topics. The first one is draft selection surprises, or no, it's not surprises, but excuse me. Based on what you all have understood or come to know over the past couple of days. Who is that one person, that one player? It could even be the first rounder, depending on how you valued him heading into the draft. But who is that one player that you're actually looking forward to seeing stepping on the field, or actually hearing about? Because OTAs and rookie mini camps are coming up, training camp is coming up, preseason is coming up, regular season is still down the line. What is that one person that you're actually listening or looking forward to hearing their storyline develop as the months continue?
I guess for me, I'll go with Percy Butler, and that's just because of, like I mentioned earlier on the show, that he's a guy who I haven't had a chance to look too much into. I've seen a couple of his clips and whatnot, but a lot of people seem to be pretty high on him. I mean, Chris Sims, he went out on a whole ledge and limb and said that this guy's the best pure free safety in the draft. I mean, I don't know what the coaching staff's vision for Percy Butler is right now, whether they see him coming in right away as a guy who's going to impact on the defense, but I do know that he's going to impact on special teams. And he also could make Troy Apke really expendable this year. I mean, because this is apparently a special teams gunner, but he's also a guy that I think at some point in the season they're going to expect him to impact on the field. Ron said that they're going to try him out in kind of that Buffalo nickel role, and he's a guy. I think he runs a 4.38, so he has some speed, and he plays, like I said, with a lot of people. Chris Sims said he plays with a rocket up his ass. So I mean, he's a guy that's going to go out there that yeah, I know. I mean, but if he's this guy that they say he is, he's out there. He can make the plays, he can hit, and everything. He has the speed. He's a guy I'm excited and intrigued about, just to kind of, like you said, more read his storyline as it progresses through all OTAs and training camp and whatnot.
AJ, you got a guy? I do. I got a guy. I know we got the BG, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna step in for him.
Nah, you good. Go ahead.
Go ahead, bro.
Nah, go ahead.
So look, I'm gonna go. Since he mentioned Percy, I'm gonna go ahead and just mention Fedarian. You all know where I'm at with Jahan, man. I think he was one of the top 4 receivers in the draft coming out. So Fedarian is interesting because it's not necessarily. I put it this way. I literally wrapped up my film study with him yesterday evening, and I'll draw my conclusions out later. But I like his physicality, man. I love his competitive toughness. I love his hustle, his effort, his pursuit ability. I do understand the pass rush concerns, but I also see the traits that they're talking about. He has very good initial moves, like his initial swat, his initial chops, his initial rips, all those, everything. Like, if it works, he's good, but he has to develop in terms of his counters. He has to develop in terms of his use of hands, being consistent and actively fighting and engaging. And with all that being said, I am interested in seeing how his storyline develops, because if he turns out to be that anchor in the middle of the defense, that defensive line, I think that this is one of those seasons where we'll see a lot more production through subtraction. And with the loss of Tim Settle, the loss of Matt Ioannidis, it's going to bump up Fedarian Mathis' importance to this defense. It's going to bump up his importance to the defensive line, but also he'll get plenty of reps. He's not that quote unquote backup defensive tackle. This is a rotation that's always been the case for the defensive line. It's going to be a rotation, and Fedarian is going to see a lot of opportunities in run situations, first and second down, goal line. He's going to be that anchor for the defense. So I would love to see how his storyline develops throughout this offseason, heading into training camp as well, to see how he matches up against the veterans and things like that, and see how he produces. So that is my one person that I'm looking forward to this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this offseason, Jahan Dotson, I feel like he has to produce immediately. We have to see him being utilized outside of just even the slot position. The reason why he's important for me is because I feel like they have 2 slot receivers in him and Curtis Samuel. I'm not quite sure that Dotson will be able to win on the outside in the NFL. I know for sure Curtis Samuel doesn't do well at winning on the outside. So I'm just curious to see how Scott Turner plans to utilize these players and the different formations and packages to help these guys complement Terry McLaurin, but especially Jahan Dotson. With him going 16th overall, his career is now going to always be compared to what Jameson Williams and Chris Olave and Treylon Burks, what they end up doing at the wide receiver position out of that draft class.
I think that's fair. With in terms of like the comparisons for careers. I don't know too much about Treylon. I can't speak on that, but we've heard about Jameson a lot, and obviously Chris Olave. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, we'll
I
see.
say Treylon. I say Treylon because they could have moved back again and acquired more picks if that was really the narrative that they wanted to accomplish. And I think Treylon went maybe 22.
I thought he was right behind him. Am I tripping? I thought he got selected right behind the. I'm about to look. Hold on.
Yeah, let me look. Treylon.
I think Burks was 18th pick in the draft.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not
He
he
was
was
mistaken.
right
18.
behind the Commanders.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, he was 18. Okay, so my bad.
So those receivers were going like at the rate of hotcakes, man. I mean, so you just don't know what you would have gotten, even if you traded back or if you would have passed on a receiver there at 16. You're probably waiting and hoping that none of the, I guess, the second or third tier guys are taken by 47. So I'd have been a little worried about that. But Dotson, somebody mentioned today a comparison for him, AJ, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this. Do you see Santonio Holmes in him?
Oh man, I haven't heard that name in so damn long. Damn, do I see San Antonio Holmes? I think San Antonio Holmes was a better route runner. I'm trying to remember Santonio Holmes after the catch. I think he might
He
have
was
been
pretty explosive after the catch.
yeah, he was pretty explosive, but San Antonio
Yeah.
Holmes definitely had some great hands on him. He definitely attacked the ball well. I don't think I really see the comparison of those two. I'm trying to think who I compared Jahan Dotson to.
Yeah, y'all had that conversation.
I
'Cause
think
I ain't good with
I think
comparisons.
Jahan Dotson, honestly, I think Jahan Dotson reminds me of Jamison Crowder. It just provides you more after the catch and probably a little bit better hands. But I feel like they have similar releases off the line. They know how to get open and play the middle of the field and read zones pretty damn well. I just think that Jihad is faster than him and can create a little bit more after the catch and better hands. But he reminds me of a Jamison Crowder a little bit. Like not Jamison Crowder now, New York Jets, but you guys know the Jamison Crowder before he got the new contract.
A bigger, faster, and better hands Jamison Crowder I'm taking all day in the first round. And that is closer to Santonio Holmes. So I think the comparison is somewhere.
Because
Yeah, I was gonna say
Jameson,
that.
you're never allowing a Jameson out wide either. Like
That's true.
You could put Jahan at the Z. So you got it, Drake. But I was like,
That's
positions, not just
right, and that's why AJ isn't wrong with Jameson Crowder. I can see the Jameson Crowder comparison, but I also think he's somewhere in between a Jameson Crowder and a Santana Moss, which probably leads him right to Santonio Holmes.
Whew. Santana Moss is a different dude. Maybe we gotta bring him on the show and ask him that question if he sees himself within Jahan Dotson, or maybe he's already been asked that with the Commanders working with Julia Donaldson. But yeah, I don't know about the Moss thing, but I guess I can understand the San Antonio Holmes thing a little bit. Definitely have some similarities in each other's games.
Now let's go ahead and get to the last one, and then we're out of here, fellas. We talked about one we're looking forward to, and I'm not going to say one we're not looking forward to seeing. The question will be rephrased. who was out of all of the names that you did here? Who was the least expected, or at least the one you were down about, or disapproved of, or disproved of? The floor is yours. Which one is that for you all?
I guess I'm gonna go with the Fedarian Mathis pick, and even though it was one I had to kind of sleep on, I had to sleep on it. But initially, when I heard it, it just was baffling to me because I didn't understand it, and I kind of thought like a few other fans thought, and the fact that the defensive tackle position we kind of created our own need and had to kind of maybe overdraft that need. But then the more I read up on it and the more I looked at it, I said this is it's slightly different than just creating a need. Because I don't think we had a Federian Mathis on the roster already. And so I get the vision. I completely get the vision of the Federian Mathis pick now. Like I see what they want to do. I mean, they need the space eater. They want that guy sitting over the top of center, the one that can make plays. And, also he's the guy that can help the rest of the defense. Like Jamal mentioned with Deron Payne, you can play him further out, but also just create space for the linebackers as well. Now the linebackers may have a better opportunities to hit their gaps with a guy like Federian Mathis sitting in the middle. So that's a pick that initially I didn't understand. It was a head scratcher, and I was down on it. I was a little down on it. I'm not even gonna lie, but after sleeping on it, I do get it and I understand it.
Yeah, I guess what's crazy for me is Jahan Dotson. Once again, I just felt like their board, what their board should have been, in my opinion, played exactly to what it was in the draft, and they ended up drafting backwards. I mean, they ended up trading back. Um, we heard about the Chris Olave love, the Jameson Williams, and Kyle Hamilton, and for them to trade back and take Jahan Dotson at 16, in my opinion, was way too high and disappointed me as a fan. That's not to say Jahan Dotson can't play, but I just would not have taken him over Jameson Williams, Olave, or Kyle Hamilton. So to drop back five spots and have to settle for him at wide receiver was disheartening as a fan, especially after we were outside in the cold for all those hours and the pick come up and they trade back, and then I think I found out about the pick while I was heading home. You feel me? Didn't even stay there to wait for them to draft Jahan Dotson. But that's how disappointed I was in the team for for doing that move, because I feel like already in the week you already have an idea of how this trade could possibly work for you. So that conversation, the trade back with the Saints, did not happen that night. It happened days before. So you already played out the different scenarios. Hey, what could the Texans do here? What could the Vikings do here? What could the Ravens do here? Blah, blah, blah. You did all that, and you still didn't end up with the guy that you thought you would be able to still acquire at 16. And you even considered trading back again. That is telling for me, because that means you weren't really even sold on taking Jahan Dotson. It's just that you knew that you really wanted to improve your wide receiver room, and if you didn't take somebody right there at 16, you probably wouldn't draft the wide receiver at all, because now everybody would be off the board that you really wanted and you felt that could be a contributor, and you didn't want to settle for the guys like the Alec Pierce, the Christian Watson, and the Sky Moores. So that tells me you failed in that aspect of the trade process. So that's why for both of these questions, Jahan Dotson is that guy for me, because I feel like there were blue chip players on the board and they didn't select one of them, and I'm disappointed because I thought that this team would value blue chip players more so than complementary pieces or guys that just will be average, not above average.
Well, um, are you so how? Let me ask you this question before I get to my answer. So when you say average, are you saying that you had Jahan Dodson in your top five and you thought that he has potential to just be average? Because he was in your top five for receiver prospects as well. So
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out.
I had him five. It was either 5A, 5B, but I that's based on overall, right? But for Washington in particular, sitting at 11, my number one guy was on the board available. My number four guy was available on the board. And then just overall prospect wise, Kyle Hamilton is a top 10 player to me. We're all on the board at 11. And this team decided to pass on all of that and trade back five spots and have to settle for my 5B wide receiver, my 5A, 5B wide receiver. You feel me? And I just don't think that was their plan. Like I feel like that was not their plan, because if that was the case and that was their plan, they wouldn't have considered trading back again. You see what I'm saying?
Uh, um, to a
I guess
degree,
that's
because
where
I
I
don't
get
think I think
confused.
they got I think they got offers, but I don't think we said they considered. We just know they had offers. Like that's all we know.
Well, I
They
thought
said,
that I read that Martin Mayhew said we were considering moving back again from 16.
well, I could check. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I got the transcripts. Even with that being said, if they said they considered it, then yeah, that holds some merit, and I got it right here. Um, he said 17. We were interested in moving up, and we were finally able to strike a deal. I needed more picks. Consider. Uh, hmm. That's gonna take some breathing. Fuck that. I still got it. I'll let you know after the show is over. But for me, believe it or not, it's the first round pick for me.
Okay, I found it. I found it.
Okay.
I found
What was
it
it?
from a tweet. Peter Haley said after trading back to 16, Martin Mayhew says the Commanders could have traded back again, but didn't want to pass on Jahan Dotson.
Okay. All right. So for me, the actual one that I was least or most disappointed in a sense was Dodson, but not for the same reasons. It was the evaluation standpoint. Like when you play the chess game, you win some, you lose some. But for Washington, I think that when you kind of take the entire thing into account, I think that they could have found their way to 20 initially. Like if you want to trade back, I think you could have took that risk knowing Jahan was going to be he was a late first, second round type of guy. So I think that if your initial trade, I think you could have gambled just a little bit further and acquired more. Who knows what they could have offered and who knows from what teams. So I don't know that part. But initially, like on the surface, when they traded back to 16, I think that obviously the floodgates is open. I was cool with losing Olave. And when you make that move from 11 to 16, you're actually moving back because you think that Olave may be a mid-round guy. But at the same time, Saints taking him isn't out of the realm of expectations. Like I think that this is somebody that they probably even considered the Saints would take. So if you're okay with losing Olave, I don't know if they have Dotson higher, but also at the same time, this could have been one where it's like we like Dotson just as much, if not more. So I just feel like at 16, that spot was fair to move back from, but who knows, man. That's kind of where I'm stuck at. Is just the value part. It's hard for me to get over that. It's been like 4 or 5 days. It's hard for me to get over that. But yeah, it's just I ain't gonna lie to you. It's hard for me to get over that. But in terms of the player, I understand it. I'm cool with him. I like him. But could you have moved back a couple more spots off of your initial deal? Not like another trade back, but if you could move back a couple spots off your initial deal, I think that they could have. And still found a way to get Dotson.
Bro, it's been so hard. Like after the first round pick, I was just like, man, you know what? Fuck Washington's draft, dog. Because like at that point, I just felt like I don't understand what they're doing. Shit, I would have been comfortable with signing 2 wide receivers to $20 million plus contracts, bro. Like trade that 16 for AJ Brown. Like at the end of the day, if I'm really trying to provide weapons to Carson Wentz, man, let's go ahead and do this. And I'm not trying to pay Deron Payne. Like, let me go ahead and add another explosive weapon because I just don't understand how Washington is not being aggressive, but we have Philadelphia Eagles being aggressive. And I guess you could say in their situation, they lucked up on a playoff berth just like we did Ron's first year, right? But they don't even have a passing offense. And they have invested a top 10 pick in Devontae Smith out of Alabama. They traded a first round pick for AJ Brown and signed him to a big time contract. They also drafted Jordan Davis. They've been pretty aggressive in their moves that they're making this offseason and going forward. Whereas you have Washington kind of like playing it safe, man. And it's just like
Washington couldn't do none of that though.
Washington could have traded. If you're gonna move back to 16, right? I feel like they could have made a move for AJ Brown.
But Devontae was on his second. He's heading into his second year. That's kind of where I'm at. Like they have Devontae, and he was a first rounder, so they have Devontae until like 2026 before they have to really pay him. Terry, you got until 2023. You
Yeah,
gotta
but
pay that
but
nigga
see,
like tomorrow.
with me, I have no problem spending that money. If you think about Washington, really doesn't have money allocated to many players like big time payouts. Like you still don't even understand what's going on with your quarterback situation. But I feel like they even the Curtis Samuel contract, they can get out of that contract next year. I just feel like I want playmakers. I would particularly build my team out a different way. I would be more aggressive than Washington is. I feel like they're just not being aggressive. They're being lackadaisical, and that type of shit is going to lead you into taking L's, and you're not going to win. Like you just got to go about it a different approach, and it's interesting to see who's being aggressive and who's not being aggressive.
But
And
where are you getting the money for AJ Brown right now? I think they have $10 million in cap space, and they would have to pay him, and they still wouldn't. They still have to pay Terry.
they would
Oh,
easily
we just
be
gonna let
able
Terry
to
go. That's all.
they would easily be able to figure it out, bro. Like
Fuck, bro.
I mean, at the end of the day, like all these things can be figured out. They didn't have to sign AJ immediately, but they could figure it all out. Like I don't know their entire cap structure. But it's not like they don't have the money to be able to make these type of moves.
I
If the Rams are paying what they're gonna pay Allen Robinson maybe like 16, 17 million this year at wide receiver. And they're about to re-up Cooper Kupp on a new deal. And they have less cap space than Washington does. And they're still gonna get a deal done with Aaron Donald to give him a new deal. It's just all who's working your cap room. Like you could finesse it so many different ways. I think for me overall, like just with Washington, and it sucks that I'm a fucking fan of this team, but I just don't see the aggressiveness that I would like from a front office and being able to make these moves. And it's like I guess this week I've been able to read different articles that show me how aggressive like the Eagles per se have been with this AJ Brown deal, for example. Like
I
they
I
started
just think
talking
that's a
with the
little
Saints.
different though.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
all.
it's a little different because people are like, oh, we still have to pay Terry McLaurin, who's on a new deal. But the fact is they were still aggressive in getting things done and trying to add more playmakers to their team. Like I said, if
But we gotta
Washington
talk about
really
think about the catapult of the thing, AJ. Like why is the reason AJ Brown is in Philadelphia right now? If you had to get the number one reason, why is AJ Brown in Philadelphia?
because
Just one reason.
Tennessee didn't want to pay him what he's really worth.
Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown talk all the time. They're best friends. AJ Brown is the one who excuse me, Jalen Hurts is the one who went to management and said, this guy is ready to go. You can make the deal for this guy right now and I could play with my best friend for a year. Like it was Jalen Hurts too. That's why I was like, when we talk about the Washington side, that's one thing. But I think that's why I was like, it's a little bit different. I can, if you say you want to be aggressive enough, more aggressive, we're at free agency, I'm with you. AJ, we talk about it all the time, but when it comes to AJ, this is just different because there's other factors, and we have to think about it outside of Washington standpoint. You're not competing with Philly if Jalen Hurts is on that team giving them inside information from his best friend. You can't compete with that. And it's an AFC team and an NFC team trading. Like you're gonna get you're gonna become number one priority because we can get that first round pick. We can get a receiver at 18. We'll go ahead and go with Treylon Burks. You can give us that first rounder, and we can keep maneuvering like that. Y'all can pay AJ Brown, and deal with that situation on your side. But Jalen Hurts is the reason why he's in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Yeah.
I just feel like maybe Washington isn't utilizing their players to help them with like decisions as well. Because if we're gonna put the power in Jalen Hurts' hands in Philadelphia, that means Terry McLaurin should have some say so on who do you think would best complement you with this wide receiver pick that we plan on making in the first round. And I'm pretty sure he would have gave his honest opinion. I don't think Jahan Dotson would have been the top two of of those choices if they listened to him. I just feel personally for me that Washington just isn't aggressive enough. Like, yeah, I know we've agreed on it with the free agency. I just don't know like what the fuck is going on with them. Because it goes even back to the Carson Wentz trade. Like they weren't aggressive enough in the point of putting their foot down and telling the Colts to just take the 28 million and pay that. They decided, oh shit, we don't want to lose out on this guy. We'll just take it. and it fucks up your whole roster. Like, it fucks up everything that you plan to initially do, and you also lost depth in the one position that you had depth at. You didn't even have a worry at that position. You could have still kept Tim Settle. Tim Settle still wanted to be here. It just messed up a lot of things just because it didn't take that aggressive approach. But I mean, I guess we just got to let it play out. Like, I guess that's why I'm growing frustrated with the team. I'm ready for Ron Rivera to get the fuck up out of here. I just don't see it, man. I'm at this point, I'm a frustrated fan, and I don't think I'm gonna get like really appeased by this team until maybe the half point of the season. Like, I'm just ready for football to begin overall, but I really want people to see how the lack of being aggressive and the decisions that they've made are going to cripple the team, because I don't see it working out. Even though, like, yeah, I got friends and shit on the team, I want them to win, but it's not realistic, in my opinion, the way that they've been going about building out this roster overall.
Dre, last words before we get up out of here? Anything?
I think we touched on everything. Like I said, we at this point, man, it's all about, like you said, just seeing what these guys can do, man. I guess we got what I don't know what day the actual rookie mini camp starts. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so we got that coming. I guess that's the first ounce of
try to get
action
in there too for listeners. Try to get up.
Yeah. Let's do that. If it's just Jamal, that's cool. If it's us, that's cool. But yeah, we would love to get that access. But yeah, so I'm just ready to see what these guys can do, man. We done talked about them ad nauseum. Now it's time to see some action.
Absolutely. We up out here now. Let me see if I can find this goddamn quote. I done fucked it up and lost it. God damn it. I have not forgot about the quote of the weeks or quote of the days, man, but I'm not going to waste anybody's time any further. I had this thing and I goddamn lost it just now. So with that being said, we had our opinions. We appreciate everybody for tapping in. If you have made it to this part, go ahead and give us your comments. If you haven't already, drop them. If you haven't, like, subscribed, rate, reviewed, whatever way you're listening, get it done. Help us out. All that good stuff, man. So with that being said, we up out of here. And until next time, we're going live. But until next time, peace.
Damn, set, watch him throw the ball. We gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through fourth and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Dive.